Parashat Lech Lecha is actually the expression of a very important and prescient statement made by the first Rashi in Bereshith. God says to Abraham, Lech Lecha, get thee forth from your country, from your birthplace, from the house of your father, which was in Mesopotamia, El haaretz asher areka, to the land which I will show you, the land of Israel. And Abraham goes from place to place. And Abraham builds an altar in every place. Vayisa Avraham haloch v'nasoa hanegba. Avraham goes back and forth in the Negev and then throughout the land of Israel. And all the places that Abraham walked in, God promises will go to his children forever. L'zaracha etein et haaretz hazot. To your seed shall I give this land. This is the beginning of the promise, the fulfillment of the promise, which God gave to the Jewish people. And we've seen the first Rashi in Bereshith, where Rashi asks, why does the Torah begin, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth? Why doesn't it begin with the first commandment? And Rashi, in a moment of sheer prophecy, Rashi says there will come a time in future Jewish history when the nations of the world will say to us, the Jewish people, you are thieves. You've stolen the land from the Canaanites. And the Jewish response is, God created the world and all the lands. He gave the land of Israel to the one whom he believed was worthy of it. Le'ish asher yashar be'einav, the one who was righteous in his eyes, and that was the Jewish people. God gave it to us. Now the world has called us thieves. And even more than that. We are seen as the occupiers, the people who are living in occupied territories. We took away, stole away, forcibly occupied the lands that belonged to the Palestinians. And therefore we are condemned again and again. And therefore in UNESCO, which is the United Nations institution that expresses culture and values, it was just voted upon twice that in effect we do not have any ancient ties to the land. The names of the holy places are their Arab names. The Hebrew names have no place. We seized land that was not ours. Now I must tell you that nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth because the United Nations wanted to divide the West Bank into two parts. One to go to the Palestinians and the other to go to the Jews. In the meantime, that land was a no man's land. There was no Palestinians who claimed it. There was no Palestinian nation, no Palestinian people who lived on it. No man's land. And we accepted the partition plan in 1947, November 29th, 1947. We accepted the partition plan. which meant that we would get roughly 20% and the Palestinians 80%. They refused to accept it because they didn't want us to have any part of it. We won the war of independence against the Palestinians, who wanted then to drive us into the sea and make sure we didn't get our 20%. And then in 1967, the Arab group fought us again to drive us into the sea. And thank God we won miraculously, and we won the entire West Bank. And still we have been willing to separate and divide and share. We're willing to give back in 2005 94% of the West Bank. Not give back, give up. And still the Arabs said no. And President Obama has made a whole issue of territories, of settlements, and as if that's the reason for the difficulties between the Arabs and the Jews. That's not the reason for any difficulties. The reason for the difficulties is because the Palestinians don't believe we have any right whatsoever to live in any inch of the land of Israel. And they do everything they can to falsify history and falsify facts on the land and make their point that we never had a history in this land. The lie of Goebbels in the Second World War is being repeated again and again and again by the Palestinians on campuses, in expressions of BDS, and wherever they have any kind of forum that people will listen to them. I've come to a very bitter conclusion. I was always very much in favor of a two-state solution. Under the present leadership, there's no possibility for it. Because whereas we recognize the fact that the Arabs have a right to live here, we have to divide and share. They do not give us that same respected privilege. And therefore it's crucial that we continue the settlements. And I would even argue that we take true ownership of the settlements. Certainly all of those areas that we require desperately to make sure that there's not another Arab attack to throw us into the sea. Those areas that we require for security. And certainly the sacred areas, which certainly belong to us. Tragically, the Palestinians refuse to believe that we have a place here at all. Tragically, the European nations, many, many, many of them, and other nations of the world, are going along with this falsification of history. The best response that we can do is to take over more land and to make sure that it's ours and that we hold on to it. Because the world will take everything away if we give them the chance to do so. Shabbat Shalom.